Hello folks, this is Greg Newens. We'll be starting the webinar shortly. We're just waiting for a couple of last stragglers to come in, and we'll be starting up. Thank you very much. Good morning everyone, and good day to those of you on the East Coast. Thank you very much for joining us for our webinar today here in Teleplace. I'm Greg Newens, founder and CEO of Teleplace, and I'll be giving you a quick presentation about Teleplace and take you on a tour, and then answering some questions. And you've already had a chance to meet the docents in the individual rooms, and you'll also get a chance to follow up with them at the end of the webinar if there are additional questions. Great. Well, as you've gathered, you're inside a Teleplace right now, and we'll look a little bit later around this particular space. Teleplaces are secure virtual workplaces for enterprise collaboration, and they're used in a wide variety of settings to allow people to collaborate with multiple folks who are in different places around multiple applications, and to collaborate in different ways at once, in particular with voice, video. So I can turn on my webcam right now and be able to demonstrate that and use that as an additional mode of collaboration if I want. We could put this on top of an avatar, and the kinds of avatars that you folks are wearing right now, or use it as a screen contents as we're doing here. So who's making use of Teleplace today? Let me just show you a couple of names. You won't see all these on our website. Of course, differences are an important part of an emerging market. And here you see a pretty impressive set of folks who've done some very innovative things with Teleplace. So let's take a look at what those folks are up to. Today's workflow that you're participating in is what work group training in the form of a webinar. Other folks are busy using Teleplace as operations center for their distributed operations, and still others do extensive project management, whether that's executive management, product development. And we like to insist on the point that Teleplace is not a meeting technology, but an online workplace. And for each one of these workflows, there are appropriate ways to do it. So let me go ahead and show you an example. I'm going to go ahead and just drag in a poll and put it up on the wall here beside the screen, and you should see the object up here. And by the way, when you see this pointer going from my avatar, that shows you who's interacting with an object at a given time. And I'm going to ask you each to vote on this. So you should have just gotten a panel that lets you answer the question for how you would imagine using virtual spaces. So we see that okay, workgroup training is pretty popular, and lots of program management, and for the crowd that we're talking about here, a little bit less of Ops Center. Just wait a moment for the last few folks to vote. See, we're getting a better voter turnout than the federal elections. This is good. Okay. So that's an example of, even in a moderated meeting where we have turned off a lot of the kinds of changes that you can make that are appropriate in a smaller, say, symmetric collaboration space. Here, for a larger meeting, we've turned on the controls. I'm explicitly a meeting leader. That lets me determine who can use voice chat, text chat, etc. That's determined in addition to the dynamic controls by the template that we're in. You were in a project space earlier before you entered here. This is a training center template. Each one of these can be built from those templates in under a minute. And so it's very straightforward to be able to create new spaces where you and your teams work. In this case, just start up an application that I'm going to interact with, and I'm going to ask Keith to change it with me as well. So I'm going to turn off restrict changes, which I had on, and when I click this, I can edit this entry, etc. And this is symmetric. For a moment, let's see, Keith, will you go ahead and change a value for me so that folks can see what you're up to as well? And I've also enabled Keith to be able to talk to us at the same time. Keith, do you want to say?
Okay, so I just changed this value here to 55,444,
Okay.
and the rest of the document updated. And I'll just scroll down a little bit.
Thanks. So, folks, you see that this is an example of a built-in app that comes inside every Teleplace. But if this were deployed behind your firewall, it might just as well be your server-based apps like SAP or whatever is core to the workflow that you're in. At the same time, any of the elements that look like terminals here, I'm going to go ahead and, for instance, start recording a part of our session. And that gives us now a new element that is a recording of the ongoing session as we do it. So I'll just move around a little bit so we can see that. And I'm going to bring us all to a panel where if I stop our recording that we just made, it's now in here. It gives us now a new, I'm just playing element that is a recording of the ongoing session as we do it. So I'll just move around a little bit so we can see that. I'm going to bring us all to a panel. So what that lets you do, of course, is create training assets on the go. If you find yourself, as Ron Teitelbaum here, who does lots of presentations for us in Teleplace, does when he's doing explanations that come up repeatedly, then you can just a very useful feature for large events. You can delegate authentication to Active Directory so that in large organizations, access to Teleplaces can be controlled by existing groups. So for instance, we could say only the marketing group is allowed into this event today. And we've taken you through a number of those other client features. Similarly, on the enterprise server, which can run behind your firewall, as we mentioned before, important features are the scalability of the router. So we have the ability to use as many back-end images as required for larger workflows, and those can be shared across, of course, multiple Teleplaces concurrently to allow all the scale that goes on within large enterprises. There's a presentation here of a little bit of the details of how we do that. We won't take you through those, but when you are finished, we're happy to provide this question from Spag.
Yes, sir. I was curious to know how you handle the persistence of the artifacts in the environment. How do you clean it up? Are there roles associated with that? I imagine it gets quite cluttered after a time.
It's a great question. And yes, there are roles that allow, for instance, there are roles of administrator, members, guests, etc., with different rights associated with those. Along the bottom of these panels, you'll see that there's actually space for many, many cards. So documents do get retained along the bottom, and we can just switch between those. So for instance, I could go back to running the spreadsheet again, and I start up a new process on the server that is for editing that when we, but as many of those are available as necessary. The whole space itself is, of course, being stored on the server, and the documents associated with it as well. In practice, people actually seem to value the clutter quite a bit because it's actually the ongoing context. So they'll clean up the things that are extraneous, but one of the properties we've noticed over the years is the most actively used spaces actually look a little bit like a design studio or a war room in a sales organization. And there's a bunch of context associated with the ongoing workflow that's in the space.
Point some of the more collaboration features that you find there.
We are in fact busy doing that, and already have elements of that inside for the authorization that underlies SharePoint. I mentioned that we can delegate authentication to things like Active Directory. The repository will also be made explicit. There's a basically ongoing set of integration points that people are interested in. Directory systems, repositories, and basically other sources of social networking profiles seem to be the most common